Many times I have heard a well-established company say, help us, we don't know. We don't know what story we're telling. Marketing hourglass. Know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, refer. There's a process of sales conversion that is important, and they need to understand where that happens. And it doesn't happen early, it happens a little bit later on, like SEO. You have to think about, how can I adapt that one piece of content into at least 5 other ways? So how does that become certain social media posts? How does that become a video? How does that become an infographic? What are the different ways that we can slice and dice one piece of content? A prospective client, he said, it's okay to tell us if our website sucks. How many qualified introductions and qualified meetings with qualified clients are you taking? There is no perfect CRM, but there are ones that are definitely better than others for what you need. In some instances, if you know what you're doing and you know what you want to say to that particular person, you've studied just enough about them that you can have an intelligent conversation about their company or something that happened to them, then a phone can be just as much headway as an email.
You just started working with a client, okay? And now you're trying to convince them to do the marketing at scale. So where does this discussion go towards? Is it towards branding or is it towards demand generation?
Well, it definitely, I tend to veer towards the branding a bit, because I want to know, beyond what it is, let's say what services they have. Let's say it's a technology firm of some sort, and it's been around for a long time. What's their history? And besides what they do, how have they branded the company? What's the story that they're telling? Is it purely, this is what we do? Or is it talking to an ideal kind of client in a very conversational way? And so that does kind of veer towards branding in the very first discussion, where we want to nail that down and understand where are they exactly, what's the baseline. And many times I have heard a well-established company say, help us, we don't know. We don't know what story we're telling, which is unusual for a well-established company to say. But if they don't have the brand and they don't have much of a story or a voice, then that's something that needs to be addressed through a strategy that, is probably one of the first things you do no matter what.
Okay, and how does this process start? So is it like you do some detailed design thinking workshops? So what's the process like? Are you interviewing people, and how do you sort of go about doing this entire process?
Yes. So the first thing I like to do is a 3-week kind of strategy. It's an interim step. It's not a leap forward into an engagement, because we want to make sure we're on the same page with someone. And so I take the strategy part, I call it a total online presence audit. And what that means is that we are looking not only at where they are today, good, bad, what they can shift, things like that, but also the recommendations of what I would do for the next 6 months, let's say, or beyond. And if we are on the same page upon presenting that, then we can talk about what an engagement might look like on an ongoing monthly basis. And I think what people like about that is it's really not a pitch as much as a conversation, and it doesn't take terribly long either, but it is a very nice kind of try before you buy. And while they do, spend a little bit for that strategy, it's really nothing that is going to break anyone's bank, as much as them think about, is this person in alignment with what we think we might want to do? And I think that makes it a lot more comfortable for them to say, okay, knowing what you've recommended in your strategy, can you implement this? And so we definitely can do anything that we recommend. And we talk a little bit about what that looks like on an ongoing monthly basis. We don't try to do everything, all at once. We're trying to spread it out by month and make it reasonable to do some things that we can produce.
Okay, so obviously you mentioned that they want to try before they buy. And so what short-term results are they looking for and what they expect during that particular time period? Because branding obviously is a long-term process,
Yeah.
difficult process.
Yeah.
So how do you take those customers along then?
Yeah. Great question. I think the thing they have to sort of understand is that there is always what we've referred to many times as the buyer's journey. And anytime you have a complex service, not, let's say, it's one thing if you have a restaurant, or a retail store where it's a very easy sort of transaction. There's a board and you say, I'll take one of those. But if you're talking about information technology or manufacturing or anything like that that requires some conversations to occur, some consultation before they go forward, they have to understand there are essentially 7 phases almost with what it is. And it's one of my mentors, John Jansch at Duct Tape Marketing, refers to this as the marketing hourglass. Know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, refer. And so a lot of people think, well, they'll just somehow go from knowing to buying, and it's never that easy. You do have to educate a little bit up front because maybe they're not ready to buy this second, but they will be 3 to 6 months from now. So what are you doing tactically in each of those phases to lead them to at least the try part? And they usually have not done enough thinking kind of in between knowing and buying. It's more, okay, they just many times think, okay, well, they like us on Facebook or they liked a LinkedIn post that we did or something like that. There's a process of sales conversion that is important, and they need to understand where that happens. And it doesn't happen early, it happens a little bit later on, particularly if you're talking about, let's say, a tactic like SEO. With search engine optimization, it's not necessarily something that can work in 30 days from now. And so that does take a little bit of time, but once they're on board with understanding that, and they see what each of these phases entails, they can follow along and say, okay, that prospect is in this phase of the journey. What do we have to do to move them to the next phase, the next immediate phase in this journey? It's a lot easier to look at moving them from know to like, or like to trust, and so on, rather than saying, okay, how many sales can we make, and just trying to figure out the best tactic. It's a lot more linear in that way. Even if not every prospective client works that way, it's good to think about it that way. Because then you can kind of get your bearings around, a lot of the different types of tactics you do, rather than just trying a lot of things and not knowing where they fit in.
Okay, and in terms of obviously all of this brand story is done through content and the content strategy. So in terms of content strategy, what is working at the moment for most of the companies?
For most companies, I think one of the things they cannot ignore, they can't ignore AI. I think that's one thing. But more importantly, I think it has to be a bit of a combination of different things. And what I would say about this is it's adaptability. So in other words, let me give you an example. Let's say that I was to write a blog post of 1,000 words. And I usually get that off of interviewing a client, recording it, transcribing it, taking some of the best of what they've given me. Now, I could put that into a blog and call it a day, but that's not really the best way. If it was the best way before, it's not necessarily the best way anymore. And you have to think about, how can I adapt that one piece of content into at least 5 other ways? So how does that become certain social media posts? How does that become a video? How does that become, let's call it an infographic? What are the different ways that we can slice and dice one piece of content? It used to be, well, let's get as many blog posts out there as we can. And it really doesn't have to be that way. If you know how to adapt one piece and you can push it to different places in different formats, then it's a really win-win. And I think it's become a lot easier to do that with, let's say, some of the AI capabilities that are out there. So there's a couple out there that I like, but I'll give you an example. I mean, one is called Descript, and that you can basically upload your post, and then you can say, suggest some areas for me to cut this. If it's in video form, like you upload, you have a video, one video that might be 20 minutes long. Well, it's not likely that somebody would watch a video for 20 minutes, perhaps. So what about if it was to say, okay, cut this into 5 different clips of, the best clips of 5, 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, that's it. And something that used to take hours now can be minutes. And so that's one of the better uses of AI that I think is working not only for me, but for the customer's benefit, so that they can quickly adapt some things out there. And because not everybody's going to be looking at the same post at the same time, you need to kind of go where they live. And that's a great way to do it.
Okay, that's awesome. So you've mentioned AI. So is AI going to eat away all of these marketing jobs?
I am a person who actually embraces AI in many ways. And I think it's important for us, first of all, as human beings, to understand we are the boss and our role has changed a little bit. We might not be the worker, but we are still the boss. Think of AI as the employee. That employee in back that maybe somebody doesn't see when they come into your office right away. And you are the creative director, let's call it. And you still have the vision. You still have the directing to be doing. And you still have to give some instruction as far as, who are we really trying to talk to most versus others? I don't see a capability yet for somebody to just for AI to just take something like that and use it. That's a step that we still control. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. But what is fascinating and what is very, very good about some of these, I like to use one called Claude. Obviously, a lot of people use ChatGPT. I think it's great for research. I embrace that fully. So topic research, if there's like certain kinds of things that people might use for, let's say, a certain number of blog posts, then great. Then we can look deeper into those through AI. So AI is a great research tool in that way. It's a good topic tool. It can even help you maybe with a first paragraph or so, and then you can take it all the way. I'm still looking over all of these things anyway. Is the voice on target? I still have to optimize it for SEO. So I am unlike a lot of people maybe who say, oh my gosh, it's going to take some things. If anything, it's going to just take away some things that you don't have to be doing. It's better because it will elevate us into higher roles so that we can use that to, be the higher level that more of us should be. Do we have to be the writers? Do we have to be the designers? Not necessarily, as long as we are looking it over and we are editing it, we are directing it. We're still in charge. As long as we are still in charge, I don't think there's anything to worry about in that way. Some people may not see it that way, but that's my optimism with it.
Okay, that's great. So in the branding domain, so there was always this concept of company branding and all of that. Now there's new era of personal branding that is on the rise. So what are your thoughts about personal branding?
Personal branding is a really great thing where you have the opportunity to, I think you, as you think about your personal brand, you have to say, who am I for and who am I not for? I can't be for everybody. I probably have to have a certain tone. And who do I really want to appeal to most? Whether it is prospective clients, current clients, colleagues, who do I think, when I want to say what I want to say, who is going to really appreciate that? It's good to know. Like, I'll use myself as an example here. About 3 years ago or so, when it was the pandemic, I was a different kind of voice, probably entirely. I wouldn't call myself at the time somebody who was all that interested in thinking about what I would sound like personally, I think, as much as trying to be an authority. And when it happened, when the pandemic happened, and I realized I felt very like I should get out some things because I don't know what the world is going to be like. And so I no longer put anything in a draft folder, and I came out and pretty much almost every day said a lot of things that I wanted to say in a tone that was definitely a harder edge, a more conversational but sometimes blunt way of talking. But hopefully what a lot of people found still respectful, but not holding anything back. And I felt I could get away with that because I've been doing this long enough that I know what I am talking about. I have a lane that I'm speaking to. I'm not trying to talk to all these different things outside of marketing. Well, when I did that, I got some immediate reactions right away, and there were some people who said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I like what you're saying here. Somebody finally said this." And so what I didn't realize was that some people really started to notice this is this person's personal voice coming out in brand form. And so to this day, I really don't hold a lot back. I don't filter too much because that's become a voice. And so you have to play around a little bit sometimes with how you sound, but also being unapologetic about it. Because some people, if you do this well, think about all these other folks you look up to, no matter who it is. They have people who like them, love them, but they also have their detractors, and some people who don't always agree with what they're saying and don't like their approach or their tone or whatever. You're going to have a little bit of that divide that's always going to happen the more you kind of go deeper into a personal brand. But I think that's worth it. It's not worth it to try and be something to everyone. I will always say that. So now I think I've hopefully established a little bit more that people say, well, Dan's a guy who's going to tell it like it is. And that will spill over into many times how I will serve them as clients or prospects or things like that. I'm not going to hold back if I think they're going in one direction I don't agree with, but that comes out.
Okay, so in terms of which directions do you see as companies they're taking are wrong? Do you believe that, okay, this is the time to quit those channels or those things? So what are your thoughts about that?
To tell them that they're going down the wrong path?
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
paths are the wrong paths?
Yeah. Well, perfect example. I think it's early. Usually, it's early on when something like that happens. I find whether you're doing a strategy or you're talking about a website first, inevitably a website is going to come up, and that usually comes up earlier rather than later. And I think what I find is that if they will allow me, I may talk to clients, I may talk to employees or other strategic partners. And what those people tell me will not always match with what they're saying with their brand. And so that gives me a little bit of ammunition to be able to say, I know you're saying this and you're not wrong, but that may not be the thing of why people come to you. Here's the evidence to suggest you might want to go in a different way. And I also I found sometimes when I tried to hold back and not tell them all the things I thought was wrong, I got pushback from them to say, no, tell us what we're doing wrong. And there was a prospective client. He said, it's okay to tell us if our website sucks. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm not going to say that, but I will give you some things where I think there's room for improvement. And I don't worry about what their feelings are on that, because if I don't tell them, the other people out there in the world who tell them with their dollars will tell them. And they'll tell them by not buying, not investing in them. And it's better for me to tell them now so they can make adjustments. And again, that usually happens earlier on in the relationship, but it doesn't stop. It never stops. You're always saying, hey, you don't have to do what I say, but I will tell you some things that I think you might want to adjust. And I think any good consultative person should do that. Because if somebody says, well, okay, well, you're the boss, you're the client, you do what you want, I don't agree with that. I think you owe it to them by what you do to bring that up, and not worry that they're not going to like you. If anything, I am not a yes man, and I am not going to just say, okay, well, sounds good, not without me saying, what I think you should consider. So you don't have to agree every time, but you're going to hear it.
Okay, that's good. So in terms of KPIs, how do you track brand building in terms of KPIs and numbers, and what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I think there's the short answer is there's probably about 10 to 20 different types of KPIs that you can do. One of the ones, though, that I think is always neglected and is really not used as much as it should be is lifetime value of the customer. Assuming that you're not doing something where it is by nature a short-term thing, let's say, that may require a different type of KPI. But I think many times when I use lifetime value of the customer, it really gets them thinking about what are we bringing in when we have one client. And, so are you really bringing in a couple $1,000s? Or if they are staying with you for an average of 3 years, well, gosh, you're bringing in a lot more than that. So I do think lifetime value is a very good thing for them to consider. And I don't think they many times do. I think they think about, okay, this is how much they're paying us for this month, this quarter, this year. But it goes beyond that many times. And the other thing that I think, though, that I like to track is, what are they? Are you getting certain reviews? What are the number of reviews? What are the referrals, the recommendations that you get off of certain clients? Because then you can say, these clients are different. They are our ambassadors. They are the people who really sing our praises. versus somebody who uses you once and doesn't do anything else. And it's not just the dollars as much as the other things that they can do to champion your brand. So I think that's really something that every company that's consultative should look at and say, we're grateful for the dollars, but when it comes down to it, who is really helping us sell, giving us more opportunities? You don't have to necessarily go after all those things by yourself. And if you get some positive introductions, qualified introductions, then I think that really goes a very long way. But I should mention that qualified introductions are very different than introductions. So I also ask, how many of those are you getting? Not just meetings, not just FaceTime with somebody. How many qualified introductions and qualified meetings with qualified clients are you taking? Because it does no good to just have coffee if it's nobody who can bring you within arm's length of the right person. That has to happen. And so I think those qualified areas of where you want to do that and measure that, they're very important, I think, no matter what industry you're in, especially if you're in a service-based industry.
And in terms of tracking, so that is also an issue, right? So users are obviously spearheading branding, and then you have these qualified meetings that you want to track.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend people to go about building their tracking stack, or something of that sort?
Yeah. I definitely advocate for having a CRM, having a tool that makes you understand what is my close rate for certain points in the process. So, for example, I came to understand that if I was to sit down with somebody in, let's say, the first part of that area we were talking about, the strategy, if I could get them to do a strategy 75% or more of the time, they would become a client. And how did I know that? There's no way I would have known that without a CRM. And so people get too obsessed, I think, sometimes about the kind of CRM. There is no perfect CRM, but there are ones that are definitely better than others for what you need. Some are simple, some are more complex. Try the one that really works best for what you need. I've tried many different ones, and they're always sort of a work in progress. But no matter what, does it help you understand the effectiveness of your process and who you should be talking to the most? And so I think it does not have to cost a fortune. It does not have to be something that's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It can be very, very, some of the most simple ones out there that are not very expensive can be excellent ways for you to understand where you are making progress, what rooms you should be in, and who you should be talking to most. And it'll also help you, I should say, it'll help you track the length of your process. You can say, well, I think it takes a few months or whatever. No, if you know through your CRM tracking, if you are diligent about quickly saying, okay, I had this meeting, I had it in this discovery phase, and then this is when they became a client, you can say, okay, well, this takes 6 weeks. Almost always, it takes 6 weeks. When you have that kind of information on a consistent basis, then it can really help you plan for your goals, so that you say, okay, I'm not just going to say, I want this number of meetings or something. You have the data to say, the sales process takes X amount of weeks, and then the close rate is this percentage. If a CRM can tell you some of those things, you don't have to do a lot of math. You just have to be able to simply track some data that's already occurred. I met with someone. That's really all you have to do, is just give it some information and stay on top of it. Some people just look for the CRM to do everything for them, and I don't think that's necessarily realistic. You have to just make it part of your daily process, and then let it give you some data that you can then use to plan even better.
Okay, that's awesome. So there are many channels out there. So you have those offline channels and online channels, and within the online channels, the social media, and within the social media, you have like multiple players out there. So how do you prioritize those? I mean, what's your sort of like way of thinking about it? Okay, which one comes first? Where does the most of the marketing dollars will go?
Yeah. Well, every single person, I go in with the idea that they're always different, no matter what, because everybody's got not only different strengths and weaknesses in team members with certain talents, but they also have different target audiences that have different preferences. So, so I go in with that knowledge, and then I say, where are they spending the most time? And so we're getting better and better information, I think, now about where people are spending time on the web based on some of the things that are their habits and their preferences. So there are some tools. There's one that's come out called Spark Toro that is supposed to help you understand where these folks are spending the most time, what they're consuming. And there's I'm sure only going to be more and more like that help us understand where they're spending their time rather than guessing. And so when we know those kinds of things, we can say, okay, here's where they tend to consume this kind of information, and here's what they're actually reading, or what questions they have. Another tool that's been around a long time is SEMrush, or SEMrush, if you prefer. And I think I use that quite a bit for understanding what are the keywords that they're using, what are the questions that they're having. So obviously that's not specific to a channel, but it is very important for understanding what are they asking about and how do we use the language that they do. But it's not confined to digital. I think I have a direct mail piece actually that I'm using right now, and I would say that can be as effective as anything because it has like a QR code that takes them to a scheduling kind of thing, and that's totally traditional media for the most part. There is the traditional cold calling. There's still a place, and depending on what you do, that's not digital, but the phone, in some instances, if you know what you're doing and you know what you want to say to that particular person, you've studied just enough about them that you can have an intelligent conversation about their company or something that happened to them, then a phone can be make just as much headway as an email. So I think sort of the thing that is hard to not do is it's hard to not have a blog, a primary social media channel, which many times will be LinkedIn, and it's hard not to do e-marketing. I would almost include in the fourth thing is becoming video. So it's very hard not to have, let's say, a YouTube channel, and that I think will only grow in time. People are really seeing the importance of that too. So beyond that, that's not the only four things they should be doing, but I always see those as kind of the core things that people might have.
So what is the place of humor in B2B marketing? Because B2B marketing is supposed to be like really dry and white paper and case studies and that.
Yes.
So is there a place for humor there?
Sometimes you can get away with it. I think it just depends on who you are. I know of a fella who 2 weeks ago I was just on his. It's kind of a game show called Death by PowerPoint. A fellow named Chris.
Yeah. He's been on our podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris Bogue is one of the best, I think, at using humor, telling a story, and using entertainment to really get something across where you can hopefully make this leap where you go, I don't know what our script for our business would be, but I'm sure that Chris, with his background, and he's an improv, and clearly I see he's doing some entertaining things, and he's probably going to help us with speaking as well. A lot of different ways that they kind of make that leap. So I think Chris is a great example of somebody who is saying, yes, at the end of the day, you have to do this, but I can teach you how to inject some humor or some entertainment into what you're talking about. And it's just a matter of folks out there then really embracing that and understanding that, you're absolutely right. There's a place for education, and but I do think even with education, it's got to be conversational. It can't be full of jargon, and otherwise it's not going to work, because you're not trying to sell to your peers. You're trying to sell to somebody who did not get a degree in what you have. And so even when this will sound funny, but even when I talk about content, I have gotten the question, oh, so what do you do, or do you do writing? No, they don't see writing and content as the same thing sometimes. So you have to understand, hey, am I talking about stuff that they get? And how do I break that down? Even when it's not humor, even when it's not entertainment, how do I live on their level so I sound like I'm somebody who is really sitting across the table from them having a cup of coffee? Because you have to be on that wavelength. And if you're not, then they're going to say, well, is this somebody that I'm just going to go into their office and they're going to talk over my head? And then I'm going to be like, what am I paying for? Or how am I going to relate to this person? You have to meet them at their level. So there are industries where it works better than others. It's not easy for, let's say, a legal kind of person or an insurance person or a financial person to try and do humor. And they have to be careful, because it's not that they can't do it, but some people can pull it off easier than others. I have seen some examples of that on TV where I'm just like, ugh, that is a cringe-worthy kind of thing. They're trying too hard. And when you try too hard, it just shows. So I say, talk to somebody like Chris, who can help you kind of bring out the best in what you are trying to do, maybe as a speaker or as a person who's putting out regular content, to have some personality with it.
Okay, so let's talk about personality. And you mentioned that you found your own tone and voice as a personal brand. So how do companies come up with their own voice and a tone, a brand tone or brand voice?
Yeah, companies come up with their own brand voice, I think, not by hopefully one person saying this is our voice, but I do think they have to look at sometimes what the response is, and that's one thing is, if you were to put up a LinkedIn article and it was written in a very particular tone of voice, and what is the response that you're getting from that? First of all, are they not just liking it, but when they comment, what are they saying? Are they sharing it? And sometimes, don't just go by that. Many times what I will see from clients or my own clients is they'll say, hey, I really liked that article that you did on this. Well, that has a very specific tone to it and a very specific kind of direction. And so that should hopefully tell you, assuming that that's coming from a person that you not only respect, but could see as somebody as either a client or somebody who could introduce you to a client, you go, well, okay, well, that kind of content is working. I should do more of that. But it is a bit of a, I won't say trial and error, because it's not that. It goes back to the adaptability that I was talking about before, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Use that content to say, okay, I'm spreading this out from blog to social to this to that. And what is the response I'm getting? You know, am I getting anything from it? Is it going radio silent? Or are there some people who are responding to it? And by that, I'm seeing what is working better as far as my voice, my tone. Are the right people resonating with it? And it's never so set in stone that you can't adjust that. But I do think what I try to do is when I am talking to a client, I'm interviewing them, and just like you're doing here, and I am trying to use as much of their natural voice as possible. There's a difference between their natural voice when they're just talking about stuff versus when they're writing about stuff and trying to sound official or trying too hard to sound like an authority. It's too rigid many times, it's too robotic, and it's not like a human being. And if they just talk it through with someone like myself, then they'll just say things in regular speak that will help people understand it so much better, because they'll just be talking about it. And they're not trying to sound like they belong to their industry or that they're an authority. They already are an authority. They just have to be able to relate to the right people who would give them dollars.
Okay, that's awesome. So for the users, give us a case study. Okay, so give us a case study, some golden nuggets. Okay, this was a client, this was industry. You took it from there to this point. What did you do? Some actionable, insightful stuff.
Yeah. I think one of the ones that that have come to mind. I think of a medical device company a few years back who they were dealing with defibrillators and CPR and things that happen when somebody unfortunately just collapses suddenly from sudden cardiac arrest, which can happen to pretty much anybody. It's a really scary thing. And so the way that this particular company was at the time selling these products was to basically use a catalog and say, okay, maybe you've ordered from us before, you want to order this again, here's some models that we have, here's some accessory types of things you should also buy. And it was, I wouldn't call it the most inspiring and interesting way to buy. And so when I came in, I said, I think there's an opportunity based on the fact of who we are here. They've been around at least 20, 25 years. And I said, you are not just a distributor of these machines. You are somebody who can consult and help someone visualize what will happen if they don't buy this. And it may sound a little bit let's call it negative, but I do think when people realize the impact of losing an employee suddenly, losing a family member, being able to potentially save someone, but you don't know CPR, or you don't know where the latest AED in your office is, or your gym, or something like that, and you only have 10 minutes to save that person. That's it. There is no 11th minute usually. So in 10 minutes, you have to understand all of these things. Who's going to call 911? Who's going to retrieve the AED? Who is going to actually perform CPR? And you have to know that in advance. You can't wait for that. So all of that drama that comes with that, I don't think was necessarily being told as clearly and loudly as it should have been. And so we made that a little bit more of we are in the life-saving business. We are not in the selling you a machine business. We are not selling a technique. We are literally saving lives and keeping continuity with, say, your business. What does it mean when a VP of some sort or a director of some sort suddenly is no longer there tomorrow or ever after that? What is it? Let's talk brass tacks. What does it mean for replacing that person. How long is that going to take to really fill that gap? It's already an emotional tragedy, but it's also a business problem, because you have to say, we don't have a leader anymore, and we have to figure out how we're going to, pick up the slack of that person. And it's a cultural problem. It's definitely something that has an impact. So if you could avoid that, and this is another big part of it, if you knew you could avoid that, you wouldn't put that off. You would absolutely say, to prevent that, hopefully, is worth any kind of investment I can make. It's not I'll think about it. And so it really changed the process of selling, so that I think these folks knew there was a higher purpose to what they were doing. And it resulted in some of the best, I think, months that business had ever had. Maybe some of the best, at least the best year, let's call it, that business had ever had, at least in 20, 25 years. And so that was definitely a great way to change things around, because it's never what you do, and it's never just who you serve. It is always changing it to be, how do you come to the rescue of this person that has these pains? And when you bring that out, it's no longer just, you're not just supplying services and products. It's something bigger.
Okay, that's awesome. So maybe we'll end with this question. So you're a student of teachings of Ted Lasso. So can you please share with our audience, what are some of those maybe 3 learnings that you had, and you want to give it to everybody?
Well, Ted has a lot. I do say, be a goldfish is probably a good thing to have when you're an entrepreneur. Because when you take any kind of little hit of some sort unexpectedly, and we all take them, try and be a goldfish. Understand that everything is probably replaceable in some way, and it can be something even better that comes next. So do that. I also think this is a Roy Kent. Don't settle for fine. As a client, don't settle for fine. Somebody who just gives you money is not enough, no matter what it is. It has to be somebody that you really enjoy, you feel a purpose for. They make you smile, and you see value and reward in working with them. So fine will not build your business as much or as fast as somebody that you really love working for, and it's a good relationship. And then I think there's probably another here, but I'm drawing a blank on a third one. Let's see. I should know another one, but I think that's the thing that I always notice about Ted is he finds a way to not let things get to him, no matter what, and he really sees people as part of a team. I think one of the things I'll take, this is a third one, is he's telling this player, Jamie Tart, that the problem is that you think you're 1 in a million, and you only have to be 1 of 11. And I think that's a really great thing to consider when you are leading any kind of team, to say, what does this person bring? I don't need them to be a superstar. I just need them to understand where they fit in and what their role is and what they do best. They do not have to work on all of their strength or all of their weaknesses. It's more, what is their greatest strength? And find that part of it that fits in best. Don't worry about, trying to make everybody perfect. Just, what if you are one of, in that case, 1 of 11 or 1 of 50, where do you stand out the most to help the rest of that team? You do not have to be the star. every single time. So that's a good one, I think.
So these are awesome.
Yeah.
So where can people find us? Find you?
Yeah. Well, you can definitely find me. You can email me, Dan at highcaliberbranding and .com, and that's my email. And then you can, if you want to see my website, it's highcaliberbranding.com. And those are really some of the best ways, I think, to do that, connect, but also connect to me on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is probably as good as any. So just find Dan Gershenson. I think there's only 2 of us in the world, so with that name. So that's where as good as any place for us to connect and continue the conversation.
Oh, okay. So then I really enjoyed our talk.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the time. Great questions.
Okay, I really enjoyed the talk. Okay, have an awesome day. Okay, take care. Bye.
Thanks so much. Take care.